Insight on this and more is Benjamin Schmitt, postdoctoral research fellow at Harvard University and senior fellow at the Center for European Policy Analysis. Benjamin, so glad to have you on this morning. Thank you for joining us. We know that joining the EU is a complex process. With that, can you just briefly outline the criteria for membership here?
Sure. Yeah, there's something known as the Copenhagen criteria, and what that is, these are the rules that when we're talking about EU integration and supranational governance, define whether a country is able to join the European Union. States have to have rule of law, good governance, aspects of democratic norms. Protection of human rights. They also have to have a functioning market economy and sign up for basically integrating with EU's laws and institutions. That means regulations from everything from trade to energy and everything in between.
Now, we know at the moment that Ukraine does not currently meet the criteria here for EU membership, which has led to Zelensky here kind of pleading for a special exception. What are the chances, the probability that Ukraine could receive that?
Well, I think that Ukraine, especially over the past several years, but now that we're seeing it standing up in a heroic fight for its own freedom, really has demonstrated to the EU there's no doubt that it deserves to be part of the European Union. I think on a functional level, this will still take time, likely, and basically that's something we're going to have to see going forward. But it's going to be very difficult to assess this properly while Russia wages an illegal war of unprovoked aggression against Ukrainian independence.
And just for clarity here and understanding on why Ukraine is asking for membership, what are the benefits, especially right now for Ukraine, to gain membership in the EU?
Well, Ukraine's basic push since 2014, since the Euromaidan revolution, has been the motto that freedom is our religion. Basically, they had this movement that set them on a Euro-Atlantic course, and they've had these Euro-Atlantic aspirations for some time, both NATO and EU membership, and this is part of their basically political arc at this point, and as it should be. And so that's what we're seeing right now is, especially in this time of crisis, they're not going to give up on basically their aspirations of joining a free, open market, liberal democratic order that is the European Union, and by virtue of that, the West.
Got it. Russia and Ukraine obviously had their first rounds of talks, kind of hoping. I guess the general hope is to kind of get to a point where we have a ceasefire here. That happened after 5 days of fighting, but so far no concrete insight into whether any of that was successful. Do you expect, more progress in negotiations and to get to a point where there is some semblance of peace or at least a ceasefire?
Look, President Zelensky has said from the start that he has always had an open door to diplomacy, just like the United States has and just like the EU has. And he's been open to these talks and pushed for them even on the eve of the massive Russian invasion of his country. The fact that they had these, he was very clear that he didn't expect much. And the reason for that is that, Russia basically continued shelling cities around the country during these talks. So you really, the only people that can understand and decide the future of a free and democratic Ukraine are a free and democratic Ukrainian people. And they can't be done. This can't be done at the barrel of a gun. So it's going to be very difficult to see how this plays out in terms of if there's any sort of route to a ceasefire, which we can only hope can come soon, because of this ongoing aggression. It's very difficult from that perspective, from a diplomatic perspective.
We have obviously seen a huge shift in Europe's approach to Russia since the start of this invasion. Some saying that that's been a swift shift, some saying not as aggressive as it should have been and as it could be. Nonetheless, this marks a major turning point in European politics. Can you break that down?
Sure. Look, we've seen unprecedented policy shifts from a number of capitals, most notably Berlin. Berlin has often had what's known as a supposed Neue Ostpolitik, or this this idea of Wandel durch Handel, or change through trade, that they've basically pushed for the past 20 or so years with Russia. And they, in the past week, have canceled the Kremlin-backed Nord Stream 2 pipeline. It has been hit by U.S. sanctions. I read this morning that it has fired 140 employees, and its corporate partners are pulling out of the project. You've seen German foreign policy say that they're going to build 2 LNG terminals and commit to the European Union's long-standing, since 2015, energy union goals of significantly reducing and ultimately ending reliance on Russian natural gas. And so these, to me, as an energy security watcher, are so emblematic of the radical shift in solidarity with the West and with the EU that we're seeing throughout the European Union today.
You know, what we're seeing throughout the European Union today is a really united front. And to that end, I wonder, are you surprised at all that Europe has become so united? I mean, you've got even the infamously a neutral Switzerland seemingly taking a side here.
Yeah, I think that the images that we are seeing out of Ukraine are horrific, shocking. I mean, there's targeting of civilian infrastructure. This is really jarred, I think, many in the foreign policy community around Europe, that there really needs to be a cohesive foreign security policy, especially vis-a-vis Russia. And I think we're going to see that continue to build over the next days and weeks as this conflict continues. But first and foremost, this unity has been able to bring enormous economic pressure on the Kremlin, and needs to continue to do so. Right now, since we're talking on opening bell, I mean, the Urals price, Russian crude Urals price, has divorced itself so greatly to an unprecedented level from the Brent crude oil price that it's significantly discounted. Over the weekend, it was $11 less than the Brent price, an unprecedented number. And so my call to the private sector is it's not just for governments to act, for the private sector, don't take that discount. We need to heap enormous economic pressure on the Kremlin right now to help save Ukrainian democracy. And so as the weeks go on and the temptation increases to pick up those oil volumes at a discount, I think that we all need to take a hard look at having the private sector not, basically decide out of good corporate citizenship to just not take the discount. Don't take it. Yeah. We've seen Shell exit the Sakhalin project. We've seen Shell exit Nord Stream 2. We've seen Equinor, Norway's Equinor, exit its holdings in Russia, as well as BP. And so I think we're going to continue to see this set of dominoes of withdrawals of Western capital from the Russian market as the days go on.
Oh, that was actually going to be my next question, what you just touched on there a moment ago. We've seen huge companies, Europe's largest oil company, Shell, you just mentioned it a moment ago, it announced that it's going to exit all of its Russian operations. We got the news from BP yesterday. How significant are these decisions on behalf of oil companies?
I think they're significant. I think there's really no choice. I mean, we're talking about a regime that has waged an unprovoked and unprecedented in this millennium war against another European major state. And so none of these companies can stand by that, obviously. And we also have to remember this: the Ukrainian people are fighting not only for their own independence and democracy, but of the liberal market and open market values that have made for an unprecedented level of stability and economic growth over the past several decades since the fall of the Berlin Wall. And if they don't step up, if the private sector doesn't also step up, then they realize that it's going to be very difficult to protect their own stability in the future from the perspective of the Ukrainian people pushing for the norms that have made the private sector so successful over the past 3 decades. So I think that we're going to continue to see this trend going forward. And we're going to continue to see withdrawals. There's a lot of sectors that are doing this in addition to the energy sector, but I think it's most significant given the significance of energy to the Russian economy.
Yeah, this is just kind of, it seems like the tip of the iceberg. We hope there are more successful, peace talks, but if not, we'll continue to see the impact, from the oil industry and the ripple effects beyond. Benjamin, thank you so much for your insight. Benjamin Schmitt, postdoctoral research fellow at Harvard University and senior fellow at the Center for European Policy Analysis.